What's going on, everybody? American Football Network here with another video today. And today we're bringing you guys our top 15 NFL quarterbacks. We're live streaming this one, and we're joined by George from Hot Take City. How you doing today, man?
Doing good, bud. Doing good. Got a lot of hot takes for this top 15 list.
Good to hear for sure. Yeah, we love the hot takes, and that's what you're known as on Twitter, Hot Take City. I got his link in the chat. Make sure you guys go and follow him over there. Check him out. He said he's going to be starting up YouTube soon, so we'll definitely help promote that as soon as he does. So yeah, tell everybody just kind of what you do on Twitter and what kind of content you put out.
So I mostly put out fantasy football content. Most of them are legit, but the name comes from putting out some of the craziest takes, but they're not that far reached. You know what I mean? Like one of my craziest takes recently, Houston winning the AFC, taking the number one seed in AFC. It's really not that far fetched, but it's still crazy. You know what I'm saying?
For sure, yeah, it's definitely not a popular take, but not one that is just not possible at all.
So that's pretty much it. I mean, I follow all sports, baseball, basketball, but mostly football.
So yeah, make sure you guys go check him out on my YouTube channel. Got the link in the chat for him for his show over there. So make sure you check that out. But let's go ahead and get started with our top 15 list. So I'll go ahead and let you start off at number 15. Tell us who you got.
So number 15, I'm gonna go with my sleeper for this year, and I'm gonna go with Daniel Jones for my number 15 this year. I think he comes back from his injury, ready to move the ball. There's no Barkley there. He's gotta, put it on his back and
For
take
sure.
control of that team. So I think that's my number. That's my number 15. So I think he does it.
For sure. I mean, I could see that. I think he is gonna. I do expect him to take a step forward. I think he'll be improved from what he was last year. With especially with, like you said, Barkley gone, he's got to put the team on his back and carry them because they're really. He's the Giants' only hope offensively. The offense is going to run through him, and they'll go as far as he can take them. For me, my number 15 is also my sleeper. I expect a bounce back year from him after a rough past few years. Number 15 for me is Deshaun Watson from the Browns. He struggled a lot, really, ever since he got to Cleveland. When you look back at his time in Houston, though, he was a top 10 quarterback, especially at the end of that of his career there in Houston. He was a top 10 quarterback easily, and was looking like one of the guys that was potentially going to take over as like just a consistent top five quarterback for 15 plus years. I look back when I think of him and his time in Houston. I look back to that game. I believe they were up 24-0 at one point in the second quarter against Kansas City, and they blew that. And I just wonder how things would have been differently with his situation in Houston and just his career path had they held on to win that game. But I expect big things from Watson this year. The Browns have added more talent offensively around him. I think he's going to be more healthy than he has been since he's got to Cleveland. I think he's in the best shape that he's been since arriving there, and it's a big year for him. He's signed a huge contract. At the time, was the biggest guaranteed money any quarterback's ever gotten, and he hasn't delivered anything yet under that contract. The fans are not going to be patient forever and wait on him. So I think this is a big year for him, and I expect him to perform that way. So moving on to number 14, who you got at 14?
So I got Kirk Cousins, another guy that's coming back from an injury, and I think he bounces back. He's got a better offense than he's had over the last years. He's been in Minnesota. No disrespect to Justin Jefferson, obviously the best offense, but he's got more weapons in Atlanta than he's ever had in Minnesota, and definitely more weapons than he's ever had in Washington. So I think that if he comes out and he starts week one, I think he'll be in the top 15, could be possibly top 10. But right now, we just don't know his status. So I have him at 14.
For sure, yeah, he's a guy who can definitely go up. I think him back there with Bijan Robinson is going to be fun to watch for Atlanta this year. And this is really the first running back that you could consider a true wide receiver out of the backfield that Cousins has played with in a long time for sure. Dalvin Cook, he caught a few passes, but this is the most explosive running back and just dual threat player that Kirk Cousins has been around. You look at Kyle Pitts. I think if a guy can get Kyle Pitts' full potential out, it's going to be Cousins for sure. A guy who's been around the game for a while and played with a bunch of great stars on the
Yeah.
outside. For me at number 14, I have another old head as well. I got Aaron Rodgers from the Jets. We don't really know what he's going to be like in this Jets team. Is we got about 4 plays out of him last year. Hopefully, he can stay healthy this year because I think this Jets team with a good Aaron Rodgers at quarterback could go a long ways. They have a top 5 defense in the league. They have a lot of weapons offensively for him, and I could see them being a threat in the AFC if Rodgers is healthy and plays up to his potential. So I have him at 14, kind of the same reason for you having Cousins at 14. You know that he's on a better offense than he's had in a while, and but he's coming off of injury, so you don't really know what he's going to do. So I have him at 14. I think he could jump up. I think he could fall down. But I think 14 is a fair spot for him in the offseason. So moving on, who you have at number 13?
So 13, I have Tua, and Tua is another quarterback that 2 years ago took a big hit in injuries, multiple concussions in a year. I don't see him holding the ball that long and dealing with those concussions this year. With Tyreek Hill and Waddle as his two outside targets, and I definitely can see him moving up to the top 10. But he's definitely got to work on his consistency. Some of his throws are definitely, I mean, when you have Tyreek as your wide receiver, you're not really worried about your consistency. But he's definitely got to bring them down or, put them to where the wide receiver is able to run while catching the ball and not stopping and then making moves. I mean, one of these days, I'm not wishing it, but the wide receivers are going to get hurt because of his inconsistency throws. So I can definitely see him sliding up some, depending on if he's working on his arm. But right now, I have him at 13. So
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah, you mentioned that consistency. That was the main reason I left Tua off of my list. I want your thoughts on this. Um, for me, what I wonder with Tua is what is he going to do if, like you mentioned, with the injuries? If Tyreek Hill goes out for 6 weeks, what's Tua going to look like? Because personally, I don't think he's going to be that good without the threat of Tyreek Hill. Because when you have a guy like Tyreek who draws so much more attention, that helps guys like Waddle and the rest of that receiving core open up because they can't double team those guys,
mhm.
and they're not the primary target for the defense to focus on. So what do you think Tua would be like if his number one receiver went
he'll,
out for
he'll
a
definitely
long
slide.
span?
He'll definitely slide out of the top 15. I don't think that he's able to carry that team without the presence of Tyreek Hill. I think the pressure would be too much for him. I mean, he's still young, so he's definitely got time to learn, but I definitely don't think that he'll be able to carry that team. And with him having Tyreek Hill and even Waddle, what I'm saying, or Waddle, I mean, their two presence are, enough to where, they're not having to put 9 in the box and worry about Tua and the rushing. They have to, put rush 4, maybe 5, and have to worry about the passing because Tyreek Hill can take a 2-yard slant to the house. Waddle can take a 2-yard slant to the house. You know what I mean? So they have to worry about that. But with Tyreek out, I don't see them being as strong on offense as they normally would with Tyreek in.
For sure, I agree. And then another thing I look at with Tua is just the offensive scheme that McDaniel runs. I think it favors Tua's strengths very well, and I think it covers up a lot of his weaknesses. Tua doesn't have the strongest arm in the league, but with the offense that McDaniel runs, it doesn't matter that he doesn't have the strongest arm. It's a lot of just quick and intermediate passes, short passing game, just getting the ball out fast. And so that's the thing for me is I feel like 201 is just super inconsistent, can't carry a team. Like we just talked about, if Tyree goes out. And three, I feel like he's a big part of his success is because of the system he's in. And so that's why I left him off mine. For me at 13 is a guy who 2 years ago had a very big step forward, and then last year just completely disappeared off the map in the second half of the season. That's Trevor Lawrence, the quarterback for the Jaguars. I expect him to take a step forward this year. He loses Ridley, but they add a few other pieces around him. Bring in Gabe Davis. I'm not the biggest fan of, but I think overall the wide receiver room improved, even though you lose Ridley. Um, just based off of just the way I expect guys to progress. You still have a lot of good talent all over that offense. The offensive line has gotten better. I expect a big year from his running back ETN as well. And so I think that all of those factors and even a better defense will help Trevor Lawrence to be a better player this year. I expect him to be a guy who takes another step forward in another year under Doug Peterson. So moving on to number 12, who do you have there?
So number 12, to continue that chat of Trevor Lawrence, I have him at 12. And the reason why I have him at 12 and not the top 10 like some people, like you said, I mean, he definitely fell off in the second half, and he didn't perform like he did. I mean, he just got a big contract, 55 million a year, which I think he's overpaid a little bit. But like you said, they added Gabe Davis. They drafted Brian Thomas Jr. I think Brian Thomas Jr. is going to turn a lot of heads in that Jaguar offense. They still have Evan Ingram. Gabe Davis is going to be that guy where Trevor Lawrence throws it up and Gabe Davis is wide open down the field. I mean, he's going to have his up and downs. He's going to, go one game dropping almost 200 yards, 3 touchdowns, and then the next game, drop 0. So Gabe Davis definitely plays a part in that. But Brian Thomas Jr. is the outside wide receiver that's going to take a lot of those Ridley catches and help Trevor Lawrence perform the way he should perform and what he got paid to do for 55 million a year. So that's who I have at 12.
Oh yeah, for sure. And you look at what the Jaguars and their, at least I don't know what the front office looked at when they brought in Ridley, but what the fans perceived it as was a move for a deep threat target, a wide receiver. You have Christian Kirk, your short intermediate receiver. You have Evan Ingram for the short passes. Calvin Ridley and Zay Jones were the deep threat guys, and Calvin Ridley just never really was that. And so yeah, I think between the combo of Brian Thomas and Gabe Davis, you get a little mix of both what Ridley was last year, and also the deep threat part of the game that Ridley just never was consistent at in Jacksonville. And so I think, yeah, Trevor Lawrence, I think he's going to take a step forward. But for me at number 12, I have Jared Goff from the Lions. To me, this is a guy who's a pretty solid quarterback. He's, most games he's not going to go out and win you the game, but he's never going to just lose you the game unless it's against the Niners in the NFC Championship. Then he might. But other than that, he's a solid, just very consistent quarterback. For the most part, you know what you're going to get out of him every single week. He's got a lot of talent around him. In my opinion, a top 5 wide receiver in the league in Amon-Ra St. Brown, a guy who just makes plays and wreaks havoc for defenses. So yeah, I have Jared Goff at 12. Moving on to 11, who do you have at number 11?
So I have Anthony Richardson at 11. And yeah, I know he got hurt. I know, he's still young. He's got a lot to learn. But I think, him coming back and them having, added more weapons to that offense, it's going to be great for him. I mean, you got Michael Pittman, you got Jonathan Taylor on a fresh contract, even though he signed it last year. I mean, he did great. You got Joshua Downs. You added Mitchell to that offense. I mean, fastest, 40 time in the combine. I mean, you got a lot of power on that offense, and I think he just comes in and he just does what he normally does, and that defense got a little bit better also. So I think Anthony Richardson definitely has the potential to be a top 10 quarterback this year. It just all depends on how he comes back from that injury. I mean, a lot of these quarterbacks that we're talking about got injured last year, so it just all depends on how they react to that injury and how they do in the following year. So I have him there. I mean, I can't see him dropping. I mean, I can see him dropping, but I don't see him sliding into that top 10 until he gets a full year under his belt.
For sure, yeah. I'm high on Anthony Richardson. I did leave him off my list just because, like you said, I mean, last year I think he played what 4 games in his rookie year, and
Hmm.
then missed the rest of the season. Didn't want to slide him in there just yet, but I expect a big season from him. I think the Colts, just overall as a team, might be one of the biggest underdogs, but dark horses in the AFC, to cause some problems in the playoffs. Think they're a very young, talented team. For me at number 11, I have Brock Purdy. This is a guy who, he wins football games. He's a winner. He makes plays, but for me, the reason I don't have him top 10, I've seen a lot of lists and a lot of people who have him anywhere from like 5 to 8, 5 to 9. For me, I can't put him that high because I feel like he's not as talented as any of these guys ahead of him. He has one of the best rosters in the league, if not the best roster in the league around him. And he has the best offensive mind that the game might have ever seen in Kyle Shanahan. And for me, I just feel like Brock Purdy is more of a game manager rather than a quarterback that is going to go out and win a game and make elite plays every single week. Not that Purdy doesn't make elite plays, because he definitely has a handful of them. But for me, I feel like he's just more of a system quarterback. I don't think, if you take Brock Purdy and put him on, for instance, Green Bay, I don't think he performs the same way that he does in San Francisco. Um, even if you take Shanahan and put him there with him with Green Bay's roster, I think a lot of it has to do with the roster and the coach that is around Brock Purdy. What are your thoughts on that and on Brock Purdy?
So Brock Purdy is my number 10 quarterback. So we're going
Okay,
ahead and
well, we're
jump in
moving
there.
on the list. Yeah.
So we're going to jump there. So we're going to continue to talk about him here. Brock Purdy, the thing about Brock Purdy is, like you said, he's a game manager. He fits in that system very well to where, he's got CMC behind him. You can just dump the ball to him, hand the ball off to him. I mean, you got two weapons in Debo Samuel and Ayuk. I mean, you got George Kittle, so there's a lot of weapons for him to produce in that offense. And Kyle Shanahan's offense is simple for any quarterback to come in there and run. I mean, look what Jimmy G did when he was there. Look what other quarterbacks have done since Kyle Shanahan's been there. It's an easy system to learn. And when you talk about a system quarterback, you talk about Brock Purdy. Yes, does he have an arm? Is he a smart quarterback? Yes, for sure. But he fits in the system very well to where he doesn't have to really do much and let the game control itself. And he just got to get the ball to his playmakers. I mean, you got one of the best left tackles in the league guarding your blind side. You know what I'm saying? So it just all fits in the system for him to just come in there and, give the ball to his playmakers and let them make the plays.
Definitely. And when I look at Brock Purdy, I do feel he has this it factor to him that some of these guys on this list just don't have. He definitely has that playmaker ability. But like you said, he's in a system where he doesn't have to do much. He doesn't have to do as much as some of these other guys. He was drafted and walked into the perfect system. And the biggest point for me, and I'm glad you made it, is Jimmy Garoppolo. Look at what he did under Shanahan.
Hmm.
Look at what he's done in Vegas. It's two completely different players.
Yep.
And the same would be for Brock Purdy. And so that's why I have him at 11, not quite cracking the top 10. For me at number 10, I have Jordan Love, quarterback from the Packers. This is a guy who I think could jump up way up this list after this season. But I'm hesitant to put him any higher to start in the offseason going into it, because last year, the first, half of the season was kind of an average quarterback play out of him. He really turned it on in the second half of the year, particularly in that Dallas game is kind of the one that everybody remembers, when Jordan Love and the Packers just lit him up. But for me, it's a little too soon to move him any higher, but it's a guy who I think can definitely climb if he has a good season throughout the entirety of 2024.
Yeah, I think his second half of the season proved to a lot of people that he can be an elite quarterback in this league. And I think this year he's going to make that an issue. And well, right now he's holding out, but don't care about that. I mean, his
I
contract
think I think
situation,
they'll have a deal by the end of the week.
yeah, his contract situation don't bother me at all. I think he comes in and he proves to the league that, he is a top 5 quarterback. Even though I sat behind Aaron Rodgers for 4 years, but that doesn't mean anything. I'm going to show you how elite I am, and I think he comes in this year and he becomes a top 5 quarterback this year.
For sure. So moving on, who do you have ranked number 9?
So I have Jared Goff at 9, and I know a lot of people are going to hate that, but the reason why I have Jared Goff at 9, I mean, my number one wide receiver this year, I feel like is Amon St. Brown. So that's my rankings on Amon St. Brown. I think he is the number one wide receiver this year. So with that being said, I think Jared Goff takes that big step and does definitely get into that top 10. And at 9, him, it's not top 5. So, I mean, at being at 9 for Jared Goff, having the year he had last year is a big, is big for him because he didn't have that, outstanding year, but he didn't have a bad year. You know what I'm saying? He definitely had above average year. This year, the connection between him and Amon St. Brown is going to be even better. You add Williams in there. You got Gibbs and Montgomery out the backfield. There's a lot of moving pieces here that, came late on together in the end of the season last year. And I think the biggest thing for the Lions and Jared Goff is Dan Campbell. That's going to be the issue. If Dan Campbell stays with that coaching style, I think he costs his team a lot of games in losing. But if he sticks to what he knows and what he does, I think Jared Goff is going to be a top 10 quarterback this year.
For sure, yeah, like you said, not the best of seasons for him last year, but definitely an above average, just solid quarterback season. And I agree with you. I think that connection between him and all of his playmakers offensively is going to grow even more. I mean, you look at Gibbs and the impact he had last year as a rookie, now moving into year 2. I know they talk about sophomore slump, but I don't see him having one.
No,
I think there's too much talent around him, and I think Goff is a veteran, a good leader, and I think that he can help with that. I think that just when you look overall at him, he makes his team better. Just whether it's the plays he makes or his leadership. I'm a big fan of Jared Goff. For me at number 9, I have Matthew Stafford. This is a guy who's been an elite quarterback in the league for a while now. Um, he doesn't get his. I feel like he's so slept on when really he's done so much. And I think that he's a guy now. After last year, we had a breakout receiver in Puka Nakua. You throw in a healthy Cooper Kupp, Kyron Williams at running back was another breakout star. I think that this offense has pieces, and this is a very good situation for Stafford to be successful in. I think that he has the arm talent and the IQ. And I think he's just an elite level quarterback that is gonna have a very good season. And I think this Rams team is going to be pretty good. Have a solid offense under him. Just a big fan of Matthew Stafford.
yeah, I like Matthew Stafford this year, especially with Puka. And like you said, Cooper Kupp coming back, full season. And they got a lot to prove. They got a lot to prove. I mean, no Aaron Donald on defense. So that team has to come together and play team ball. And they're going to have to
For
show
sure.
that they can play team ball and not rely on the superstars. Yes, Cooper Kupp. Puka is an up and coming superstar. Kyron Williams, another up and coming superstar, but their tight end their tight end room is a little bit of questionable. I mean, they did sign Parkinson's to a 3-year deal, so we're going to have to see how that works. But overall, they definitely have to play team ball. So I can definitely see Matt Stafford cracking the top 10 this year for sure.
For sure. At number 8, who do you have?
So number 8, it was a little bit of who to choose, who not to choose. I mean, there's a lot of questionables here. I mean, I have to go with CJ Stroud at 8. And the reason why is, he had a phenomenal rookie year. And I'm not taking anything from him. But I don't think he does better than what he did last year. I think he takes a step back. Not too big of a step, but I think he takes a step back and, not so much of a sophomore slump, but, his sophomore season. See what I'm saying? So them adding Diggs and Tank Dell coming back to a full season. Adding Mixon is obviously big for him, but I don't think he's gonna go above and beyond over the year he had last year as a rookie. So that's who I have at 8.
Which is funny because I also have CJ Stroud at 8, and for similar reasons. They add a bunch of pieces around him, but it just, I don't know. It doesn't feel like he's going to play up to the same level that he did last year. And not that he's going to be bad this year. Just I don't think he's going to be quite as good as he was last year. And even as good as he was last year, he still made a lot. If you go back and watch him, he made a lot of rookie mistakes throughout the season. And I feel like now that people have film on him, I think that he will take a bit of a step back. He doesn't have an offensive genius as head coach like a guy like Jordan Love does, going into his second season as a starting quarterback. He doesn't have that. D'Amico Ryan's more of a defensive guy, and so I think that also kind of plays into effect to a CJ Stroud. But I think Stroud is still going to have a very good, and I think he's going to be a elite quarterback in the league for a while. I think when people make these top 15, top 10 quarterback lists for the next 10 years, Stroud's going to be on them, and in the top 10. But I do see him not being a top 5 quarterback this year. Not quite. I think next year might be the year for him. So at number 7, who do you have there?
So at number 7, I have, I don't know how people are going to react to this, but I have Justin Herbert. And the reason why I have Justin Herbert at 7 is because of the weapons he has around him. He doesn't have that Keenan Allen, Mike Williams, Austin Eckler anymore. He has a completely different offense now. New coach. Yeah, what Harvard did in Michigan was run, 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 run. But he knows that with Justin Herbert as his quarterback, he's going to have to throw. So I think he's in for a big year. His numbers might not look pretty, but I think, he definitely has top 10 numbers with yards and touchdowns. So I can see him being in the top 10 this year.
For sure. Yeah, I think he's going to have a very good season. For me at number 7, I have Dak Prescott. This is a guy who I think is a very good quarterback. It helps he has CeeDee Lamb out there as his primary target, but this is a guy who performs even when Lamb isn't on the field. It's a guy who wins games in the regular season, always has the Cowboys competitive. My one problem with Dak Prescott is just the fact that this guy cannot get it done in the playoffs. And it might not be his fault. It might just be something with the Cowboys. But Dak Prescott just cannot get it done in the playoffs. And for me, I can't really put him higher than number 7 when it doesn't matter if they make the playoffs or not, they're losing. Um, and this is a guy who I think is a good quarterback for sure. I just think I really think it's just something going on with the Cowboys, just the chemistry from front office to players, just all of it. I don't really like the way the Cowboys are running things. There's beef between Mike McCarthy, Jerry Jones. Um, who knows what even goes on? I'm sure there's a lot of stuff that behind closed doors it's even worse that we don't even know of. But for me, Dak Prescott, very good quarterback, elite quarterback. But the reason I have him at 7 is just because he can't be trusted in the playoffs.
Yeah. I mean, the only thing about Dak Prescott is, he doesn't have that wide receiver too. He's got a very shaky RB room. I mean, you got an old head and Zeke. You got Rico and you got Deuce Vaughn. I mean, can you really count on CeeDee Lamb and Dak Prescott to take that game and move forward with it, just those two, and rely on the rest of the pieces that they have? I mean, they still have Jake Ferguson. So Jake Ferguson, I feel like it would be a big part this year. So
For sure. Definitely. I expect Ferguson to have a very good season. I mean, I guess he kind of is the wide receiver too, the second option in the passing game for Dallas. But moving on to number 6, who do you have ranked
So
as your sixth quarterback?
at 6, I have Dak, and I think that Ferguson steps up into that quote unquote wide receiver 2 role and takes over, the not Brandon takes over Brandon Cooks, but helps with that wide receiver 2 spot because Brandon Cooks is he's one of those players that can step up, but sometimes he goes missing. So, but with that shaky RB room, that's going to be the issue. Dak is going to have to either get the ball out quick to his wide receivers, or he's going to have to rush more this year and help that offense out because all eyes on CD this year. If depending on his holdout, which obviously I think he'll come back and be on a contract.
For sure. Yeah, I agree. Um, and when I look at just the Cowboys as while we're on this subject with them, the biggest, yeah, like you said, the biggest thing for me is like we talked about with the Dolphins. All right, they have Tyreek Hill, which opens up a lot of options for another elite receiver in Jalen Waddle and guys behind Tyreek Hill. When I look at the Cowboys, you got CeeDee Lamb, but you don't have a guy at wide receiver 2 who can consistently beat one-on-one coverage against the second cornerback on a team. I feel like most CB2s on these NFL rosters are able to keep up and take care of whoever ends up being wide receiver 2 for Dallas. I expect that to be kind of a rotating thing on the outside a little bit throughout this season. Um, but yeah, those are my biggest things with Dak Prescott. At
Yeah,
number
I have to
6, I
agree.
have Jalen Hurts. I have Jalen Hurts. This is a guy who, he had a good season. What was it, 2 years ago? Last season, I feel like he was kind of slept on a little bit. I feel like he was, people don't understand that he actually had a pretty solid season last year. Just wasn't up to the level of the year before. And just the Eagles as a team didn't perform up to the level that they did the year before. And for me, the biggest thing this year for Jalen Hurts and why I can't move him up anymore is I don't really know what's going on with Nick Sirianni and just the Eagles front office. I think Jalen Hurts has all the pieces offensively around him to be elite. I think he has the talent to be elite, but I think he will be held back, and just the Eagles in general will be held back a little bit by what's going on with the front offices and just whatever the drama is in Philly.
Yeah, I can definitely see him. I mean, me personally, I didn't put Jalen Hurts on this list because not in a disrespectful way, but in a way that I don't think that he puts up the big numbers with having Saquon back there, and yeah, AJ Brown and Devontae Smith, they're great. Don't get me wrong, and Dallas Goedert is also great, but I don't see him having to get the ball out quicker. Um, making big plays on his own. I see a lot more rushing plays and a lot more dump balls to Barkley. And, I just don't see Hurts having a big. Now, he's going to have his fantasy year. Now, by all means, his fantasy year will be there, but I don't see him having big numbers this year, to be honest with you. So I left Hurts off this list.
I could see that. I could see with Saquon and the new additions. I could see that for sure. I could definitely see it. I think that if I had to pick of my top 10 quarterbacks to fall out of the top 10, I think Hurts would be the guy that I think does fall out of the top 10. He would be the one for me. But moving on, who do you have at number 5?
So at number 5, I don't even know if I mentioned him. Have I even talked about Jordan Love?
Not yet.
Okay, well, there's my 5. And because I lost my list that I actually wrote. So at 5, I have Jordan Love. And the reason why I have Jordan Love at 5 is he is the quarterback in the last maybe 10 years that's able to grow with his wide receivers and his wide receivers being so young. And the addition to having Josh Jacobs on that team is going to relieve so much pressure off of Jordan Love and not having to worry about, is his RB1 hurt? Is his RB1 coming to play the game? Josh Jacobs hasn't missed, near as many games as Aaron Jones has. So, and then also drafting Marshall and Lloyd. I mean, that's another big help. I mean, and I honestly think Jalen Reed and Deontay Wicks are going to be the 1 and 2, and Christian Watson coming in there and taking some snaps from Wicks. I mean, not snaps, but yards from Wicks, because Christian Watson's hammy is, one's bigger than the other. I know everyone's heard that story. And so I can definitely see him cracking the top 5, being a whole season under his belt if he played like he did last second half of the season.
For sure, I agree. And like I said, just based off for me, the first half of the season and just overall last year, I didn't quite have him in my top 5. I had him back at 10. I think he's a guy who could definitely finish top 5. I like your point about Josh Jacobs. To me, that was the biggest addition this offseason. He's a guy like him, and I love Marshawn Lloyd as well. I think that for the Packers, he's going to be kind of that gadget guy, a guy that you hand the ball off to from the backfield. You do jet sweeps, even run him out, line him up in the slot outside. I think Lloyd is going to be moved around a lot this year in a lot of unique ways for Green Bay. But for me at number 5, I have Lamar Jackson. This is a guy who won MVP last year, is a guy who has that was his second one. He's constantly making highlight reel plays, and I'm a big fan of Lamar Jackson. The reason I have him at number 5 is just from a pure passing standpoint. I don't think he's better than the 4 guys ahead of him, but I do love Lamar Jackson. I love the talent he has around him. I think that he's a guy who doesn't have that true just elite receiving core just all the way through like some of these guys ahead of him do. Yet he performs and delivers on the same level that they do. And that's what I love most about Lamar Jackson is he just makes it happen. He makes plays happen. He's a winning quarterback and he wins the game for his team. So moving on, who do you have at number 4?
So at number 4, I have Lamar Jackson. And going back to what you said, the addition of Derrick Henry, he doesn't have to run as much and not have, like, his throwing is not going to be there. And the reason why I say that is it's going to be quick dump offs. Zay Flowers on a slant, Isaiah Likely, they already came out and said that he's going to be part of the passing offense. Mark Andrews coming back. So not a lot of pressure on Lamar Jackson this year. And I don't think he's better than the 3 in front of him passing, obviously. But his rushing comes in play, meaning, a lot of, read options and giving the ball to Derrick Henry. I mean, he hasn't had a running back like Derrick Henry since he's been in the league. And, everyone's saying Derrick Henry's washed and, he's not going to perform and Lamar Jackson's going to take some of his carries. Yeah, they actually might end up with the same amount of carries by the end of the season with the same amount of yards and both of them rushing, combined almost 3,000 yards. I see a big year for both of them, and them being together is going to be, a whole different ball game for these teams that they're going to have to face, because it's not just Lamar watching Lamar anymore. It's watching Lamar and Derrick Henry. And we've seen what, Derrick Henry's done in the past with his stiff arms and his moves. So
definitely. I'm excited to see that 1-2 punch in the backfield. Real quick before I get to my number 4, looks like Big Draft Energy's talking a little bit of smack to you, saying that is
shout out
a horrible jersey.
Shout out to Big Draft Energy. He had a great stream today. I was watching. And also He is a co-host on my space this Saturday. So if you want to, and you know, definitely come tune in. We do a hot take space where everybody you know, comes crazy takes in there, and we talk about football. So
Yes, definitely make sure you guys go check that out. Big Draft Energy, appreciate you checking us out. Go follow him on Twitter, subscribe to him on YouTube, check him out, support him. But for me, my number 4 quarterback is going to be Justin Herbert, a guy you already had on your list. I'm putting him at 4. When I look at this style of offense that Harbaugh is going to bring in, yes, Herbert may have honestly he does. He has the worst weapons of any quarterback on this
mhm.
list that I have, and of any core. I know we had a few different guys. The worst weapons of any quarterback you've had. What he does have is one of the best offensive lines, particularly at the tackles. At left tackle, you're going to have Rashawn Slater. At right tackle, you're going to have Joe Alt. Or they may be switched. I doubt they will, but they might be switched. When you look at the style of offense that Harbaugh wants to run, it's a lot of getting the tight ends involved in the short passing game. And I look at who they drafted in Lad McConkey at wide receiver in that short passing game. I think he's going to be elite and have a huge season for the Chargers. A guy like Brendan Rice and his speed, I think he's going to be another one that just has a huge season in the short passing game. And for me, that I think that'll open it up for your deep threat targets like Josh Palmer and Quentin Johnson. I think that could really help this team out a lot. And when I look at just pure arm talent, Justin Herbert is the most arm talented quarterback in the NFL. Mahomes can do the different angles and just the crazy off balance throw, but nobody can drop back and throw a football farther and more powerful than Justin Herbert can. And I think Justin Herbert is a top 5 quarterback. I think if for me, what I look back on the most is the opportunity the Dolphins missed out when they took Tua over Herbert. If Miami takes Justin Herbert instead of Tua and they have the
They win the
roster
Super
around
Bowl.
them,
They win the
they've
Super
already
Bowl.
won 1, if not 2, without a doubt. And it's just I'm not even a Dolphins fan, and I was mad when
Yeah.
they made that pick.
No, they definitely win a
Um,
Super Bowl if Justin Herbert's on that Dolphins team, especially with the addition of Tyreek Hill after Tua's first year. Technically speaking, it would have been Herbert's first year. They definitely win a ring.
for sure, without a doubt. But yeah, Herbert just a guy who I think has got to be one of the unluckiest
I mean,
quarterbacks in the NFL.
my thing about Herbert being in the top 5, it's just so hard to put him there because of the weapons he has. Like he doesn't have a real true superstar wide receiver. So he's got to spread the ball around. And I have DJ Shark as my wide receiver 1 for the Chargers. I know he hasn't been healthy his whole career, but I think being in that minimum role and not having to be that number 2 guy in the most offenses he's been in, I think, him coming in as a 3 role, I think he's going to end up stepping up, and, Justin Herbert's going to like him a lot and just going to feed him the ball. And by the end of the year, he ends up being the number 1 for the Chargers.
I could see that. Yeah, I think DJ Chark is going to thrive in this offense. I think the biggest thing for me that I feel like is going to really help Justin Herbert this year, though, is Brandon Staley should go to jail for what he did to that defense with all the how that defense played, considering he was supposed to be a defensive genius and all the talent on the field. When I look at Jim Harbaugh, this defense is going to be vastly improved. Now, the only question, and it's always been the problem with the Chargers defense, is not a single one of them can stay healthy. If they can stay healthy, they may have the best defense under Harbaugh in the league. They definitely have a top 5 talented defense. When you just look at the playmakers they have all over the field, I think the defense is going to be vastly improved, and I think that'll also help take some stress off Herbert. He doesn't have to go touchdown for touchdown with every single team he plays every single week. I think that could really help relieve some pressure. But now we are to our top 3. Who do you have as your QB number 3 for the 2024 season?
So 3, I have Josh Allen. And he's not, I mean, arguably numbers wise, he is not better than the two ahead of him. But I think he has the biggest arm than the two ahead of him. And with him having no real weapons, like X Factor weapons, and Diggs leaving, the only person I see getting all most of the targets is going to be the tight end room, right off the bat, because that's who he feels more comfortable with. And also Shakir. Shakir is going to step up into that wide receiver two role until Allen becomes comfortable with Coleman. And, then Coleman eventually will take that number one spot. But I see him coming in at the 3 spot in the NFL season, despite not having no X factors. And James Cook is going to be a lot, in the dump off, action, getting a lot of, receptions for the from Allen. So I can definitely see Allen being in the top 3 this year because he's going to have to put the team on his back and do it himself.
Completely agree. That's who I have at number 3, and I'm thinking we may have the same top 3. We definitely. Well, I don't know. You are Hot Take City, so you may throw something in that I don't see coming. But
No, it's pretty
yeah,
basic, the top 2.
I agree with you on Josh Allen. I think that he has a lot of young talent around him, but like you said with Shakir and Coleman, none of it's proven yet. None of it's developed. I think give him 2 or 3 years, he may have that elite X factor weapon in Coleman, but it's not going to be this year unless just something crazy happens that nobody sees coming. And like you said, he has the best physical traits of any of the quarterbacks ahead of him, and honestly, in my opinion, any of them, just from an overall physical standpoint, better than
Hmm.
anybody on any of the lists. He's the most
Yeah,
physically
definitely,
gifted quarterback in the league.
definitely agree
Um,
with that. But I mean,
just the just the power. Go ahead.
Going back to the Coleman thing, sorry to cut you off. I've
No, you're
watched
good.
him play at Florida State. I'm a big Knowles fan. So I watched him play at Florida State, and some of the plays that he made every Saturday were just outstanding, and plays that I've never seen, happen in the NFL, with some of these rookies the last couple of years. So I definitely think, going into this draft, I mean, Marvin Harrison obviously is your most elite out of the rookie class, but I think Coleman is right behind him. I think, listen, Malik Neighbors is great. I'm a Giants fan. I'm happy we have him. Don't get me wrong. Rome Odun's got a long way to go with the 2 weapons in front of him, but I think Coleman is right up there for most yards for rookie of the year, and could potentially take that rookie of the year from you know in the 2024 season. So
I agree. And my biggest thing on Coleman is he was elite at Florida State. But what I'd like to go back to from his college career is when he was at Michigan State. At Florida State, he had a good quarterback. He had other playmakers around him. At Michigan State, he had nothing around him
yeah,
other than Kenneth Walker for a year, and he was still just as elite as he was at Florida State.
yep,
And it was just insane to see that the defense knows if it's a pass play, he's the first target. That's who they're looking for every single play. And he still just performed and was an elite receiver. I think he's going to be great. I just don't know if he's going to be that elite top 5 receiver year one. I think you can. I think he'll definitely be top 15 wide receivers in the league. I think he'll be in the running for rookie of the year. I just don't think he'll be that
yeah. No, I don't see him being top 5 overall, but I definitely see him being in the running for the rookie of the year,
for sure.
and definitely potentially being the best rookie wide receiver number wise. Obviously, not talent
I could definitely
wise,
see it.
saying, but number wise, I think that he has the potential to be the number 1 wide receiver rookie wise.
I could definitely see it. So moving on, number 2, who do you got there?
So number 2, I have Joe Burrow. Injury or not, I don't care. Joe Burrow is probably one of the most pure passers in the league. I mean, his arm consistency, his accuracy, his movement, his IQ, he knowing, what to do on every play. I mean, I was watching videos of him, and, there was videos of him talking to certain people and telling them, there's sometimes where the 2 years ago or a year ago, the mic would go out and, he'd come up with plays on his own and he'd run the whole drive on his own. I mean, just, pure athlete when it comes to that position. And with the weapons he has, just makes it even better.
For sure, yeah, and no disagreement here. That's who I have at number 2. Like you said, injury or not, I don't care if he broke his neck last year. If they say he's healthy and he's coming back to play this year, he's the number 2 quarterback in the league. Just so consistent. He's got elite weapons all over the field for him. And like you said, there's not really much left to say. You covered it all with the dude. Joe Burrow, elite quarterback. You can't argue he's the second best quarterback in the
No,
league.
you can't.
And
You really can't.
you can't argue with who we have at number 1. Go ahead and tell us who we got.
Daniel Jones. No, I'm just joking. Patrick Mahomes. I mean, there's no questions asked. I mean, back-to-back champion. He's already got 3 rings, been to 5. I mean, there's no questions asked. Patrick Mahomes is by far one of the most dynamic quarterbacks we've seen in history. He might not be the GOAT, but he's definitely one of, the most athletic quarterback we've ever seen to play that position. I mean, his rushing is not there, but he's definitely, up there. I definitely give him like a top 5 status of, all-time quarterbacks when it comes to eliteness, to be honest with you.
Exactly, you have to. And I mean, you look back at last year. Travis Kelce didn't have as good as a year as he's had in past years. The Chiefs have no wide receiver 1, a lot of drops and a lot of problems in the wide receiver room early on in the season and even throughout the rest of the season. Mahomes had a down year for what he's done the last few years, yet still he took this team to the Super Bowl and he made winning plays that won them the Super Bowl as well. He's top 5 all time. He may catch Brady. We'll see. He's still got a good ways to go before he gets there. He's got to go win 4 more before he ties him for Super Bowls. But Mahomes, without a doubt, the number 1 quarterback in the league. If you say otherwise, then you're just trolling.
I mean, think about it though. Mahomes has never had a team, or I should say, never just had a defense like Brady's had though. Let's be honest here.
Yeah,
Brady's always taken a pay cut to where his team around him was better. They paid Patrick Mahomes all that money. That's fine and dandy, don't get me wrong. But, his defense has never been a top 5 defense every time he's won a Super Bowl. And the one time he lost to Tom Brady was because his offensive line was a complete shambles. He had no offensive line help. And that Bucs defense was considered a top 5 defense in the league.
I could be getting the stat mixed up and get it wrong, but I'm pretty sure the stat was that every year that Tom Brady won the Super Bowl, he had a top 10 defense in the league.
Oh, yeah, guaranteed.
I'm pretty sure that was it might even have been every year that he made the Super Bowl. He had a top 10 defense in the league. Under Belichick, those defenses were just insane. Most of the time, they were top 5.
Only 2 years or 3, but I only talk about the 2 years that he lost to his daddy. That's all.
Yep.
Only those 2 years.
I figured you would like that one.
Yep.
But yeah, I mean, yeah, Mahomes has done more with less than any quarterback in the league, and
especially on the offense.
He's going to do it again this year. Yeah, for sure. The defense has gotten better. The defense actually gets worse this year than what they were last year, in my opinion. I don't think the offense is much better than it was last year. You do bring in Worthy, who I think might be the new Tyreek Hill in Kansas City, but you still have a lot of holes in the wide receiver room. Kelsey's another year older, and he's getting pretty up there in age in terms of a football player. So it's Mahomes definitely doesn't have the most talented offense around him that some of these other quarterbacks have. But without a doubt, he's going to get the most out of him and more than any other quarterback could get out of him.
And all I got to say is please don't fall for that worthy hype in training camp like everyone fell for the Kadarius Toney hype until you see it in the regular games. Please don't, thinking, oh, that's the next Tyreek Hill. No, please don't do that until we see it in the regular game. Please.
Definitely not. Yeah, I mean, that was who I really compare. That's actually who I compared
That's who
Worthy
everyone
was to
compares him
Kadarius
to.
Toney.
That's who everyone compares, Mitchell to. I mean, not Mitchell, Worthy to is Tyreek Hill because of his speed and who Patrick Mahomes is and what he did with Tyreek Hill. And I'm not saying that you're going to be wrong or anyone else is going to be wrong, but until we see it in the regular game, you just can't know because look what happened with Kadarius Toney. Oh,
Exactly.
when the Giants traded him to Kansas City, it was he's going to be great. That's the weapon Patrick Mahomes needs and this and that. And where's he been? 2 plays in the Super Bowl. One was a punt return and one was a little dump ball pass, and he took for 20, 30 yards.
Exactly.
So,
Yeah, Xavier Worthy's hype is definitely a lot higher than it probably should be. But he may end up if he's going to turn into an elite player and turn into Tyreek Hill. Mahomes is the quarterback that'll do it
oh,
for him.
you definitely agree.
And for me, it's more trust in Mahomes to make him that than it is in Worthy to be that.
Agreed.
For me. But yeah, George, I appreciate you coming on with me.
I
Make
appreciate
sure
you.
you guys go and follow him on Twitter. I have his link in the chat. I'll post it and pin it in the comments as well. It's also in the description. We appreciate him coming on. We're definitely look forward to having you on again sometime.
I appreciate you.
Yes,
Really do
sir.
appreciate you.
So that wraps up today's stream. We appreciate everybody watching, and we will see you guys next time.